Good afternoon. I'm here to talk to you today about discrete trial training. Many teachers struggle sticking to a research-based interventions in their classroom that can benefit their students and the overall functioning of their classroom. As a teacher, I find it very hard to stick to using research-based interventions and taking data. And I've noticed that, when I've had problems with students and then the ABA will come in, they'll ask me, well, what have you tried or what data have you taken to show us before we can help you. And I've usually not had data, or I've had things written down, but it's not in a form that they approve of. So discrete trial training is something I learned about this summer, and I did some classes on it, and I've been able to implement it in my classroom, and it's been great. So I'm going to talk about it so we can get started. So what is discrete trial training? Discrete trial training is a system of instruction with simplified and structured steps. Instead of teaching a fundamental skill in one sitting, the skill is taught in pieces and built up using discrete trials that teach each step one at a time. DTT is a concise step-by-step intervention tailored to improve a specific skill in the most efficient way possible. For example, DTT can be used to direct speech, and language skills needed for conversation, help enhance sign language or communication devices, increase daily living skills like dressing, utilizing utensils, following instructions, and encouraging writing skills. All these things are things that we use in a self-contained classroom. And DTT is very well used with students who have autism. So I want to show you a video, and as it goes through, we can talk about it, and I'll start it now.
Unit 3, Discrete Trial Teaching. Section 1, the Discrete Trial, SD, and Response. In DTT, the discrete trial is used to teach new behaviors. The definition of a discrete trial is presenting a learning opportunity in which the student's correct response will be reinforced. The discrete trial consists of 3 parts which correspond to the ABCs of behavior. These parts are the discriminative stimulus, or SD, the response, or R, and the stimulus reinforcer, or SR. Here's an example of it.
So I want to talk about that. So presenting a learning opportunity in which a student's correct response will be reinforced. And that is a word that we'll focus on, reinforced. So as they said, we'll talk about the ABC. So an antecedent is in DTT, the antecedent is presenting the learning trial to the student. In the behavior response part, the student's performance of the skill will be taught in that step. And then for C, in consequences, the teacher's response to the student's performance will be for that trial. So that will begin where we will take the data. So I'll play this and we can continue learning.
Discrete trial.
Look at me. Good looking. Hi.
So you can immediately see the antecedent, and that was the teacher getting the student's attention. She used simple words. She said, "Look at me," and the student gave that response.
5.
As you saw, the SD was the instructor saying, "Look at me." The response was the student looking at the instructor. And the stimulus reinforcers were the instructor saying, "Good looking," giving a food treat and high-fiving the student.
I really love when they talk about reinforcers. I have never really used reinforcers in my classroom, and this year I have been able to implement that, and it's made a world of difference, and I enjoy that. And again, when we look at this, these are things that we already do in our classroom, so it's easy to implement, but now you have a kind of step-by-step plan to use it, introduce it, and take data with it as well. So I want to go into this errorless teaching.
Touch my ears. There they are. Where's my ears? You got it.
Again, we can see the antecedent, which was the teacher getting his attention and saying, touch my ears. She got his attention. She gave him some hand over hand instruction, and then she reinforced it also by letting him answer the question after she did the hand over hand.
Good. Touch my nose. Touch my ears. Touch my ears. There they are. Good. Where's my ears? Good.
So another thing you may have noticed is that the instructor was not allowing mistakes and she was using prompting to keep the child successful. This is known as errorless teaching. Errorless teaching is a technique that is used when introducing a new skill or behavior. All responses are prompted, so the learner is correct and has frequent opportunities to contact reinforcement. With errorless learning, the teacher delivers the instruction with prompts to ensure the success of the learner and allow more opportunities for our learner to contact reinforcement. By teaching errorlessly, the student is less likely to exhibit escape or avoidant behaviors that get in the way of learning because he is able to contact reinforcement more frequently.
So I loved that part. When we're teaching a skill, obviously we know we want our students to be able to respond. We want them to be engaged, and we want them to feel like, every student's going to want to participate when they feel like they're learning and they feel like they're pleasing their teacher and they're getting that response, and like a good response at that. They're getting those high fives and those good jobs, and they feel like they're doing the right thing and they're on the right path. So using that errorless teaching and that DTT teaching like that enhances that for the students and makes their overall response in the classroom like greater.
No one likes to do something they're going to do wrong. This is the same with our learners. By giving our learners all the opportunities to be right, they will want to continue learning because contact with reinforcement is more frequent. Here are the steps to using errorless teaching. On the first trial, present the SD with a full prompt, then reinforce the response.
Show me hot dog. That's a hot dog. Wow. Show me hot dog. Yep, that's right.
As your learner shows increased.
So again, in this trial, we can see the teacher saying, show me hot dog. That was our antecedent. She's presenting that learning child. She got the student's attention, and the behavior, which is the student's performance of the skills taught. You can see that she asked her that question again, and then she chose the right answer. When she chose the right answer, her consequence, which is C of the ABC data, was the slinky, and that was her reinforcer, and you can tell that she really enjoyed that.
Confidence in performing the task more independently, start fading your prompts from more intrusive to less intrusive. Continue using errorless teaching with your new targets. As you fade prompts, you will need to ensure that the learner's responses are evoked by the SD rather than the prompt by using transfer trials.
So with our discrete trial teaching, we eventually want to fade those prompts.
Grammarly does more than catch errors. With
that, so we can get started back. So let's talk about some components of DTT. DTT usually involves a student-teacher ratio of 1-to-1, so you're working 1-to-1 with that student. When we're introducing a DTT, we want to start with a skill that they probably already mastered. And again, the student needs to be able to sit and attend for a short period of time. To avoid resistance or frustration with the student, you want to make those sessions fun by maintaining a positive and engaging attitude. And we can see that those teachers did a wonderful job doing that. They gave that positive feedback. They gave that eye contact. They gave that smile. Start with short sessions that last 5 to 10 minutes. And when we're starting off, I would even go shorter. I would try to build up to that 10 minutes because eventually we want a student to be working for as long as possible. So I say start with that 3 minutes and you can build those sessions up to eventually, like for those students that we have problems with sitting down and attending to a task for long periods of time, like we want to extend that. So it would be great to see that data of like, hey, this month we were working for 3 minutes, then we moved up to 5 and then 10, and then eventually we're moving to 30 minutes of sitting and doing a task. We want to initially teach tasks that a student may have already mastered. Again, we want them to feel good when we're reinforcing their positive responses. And you want to work in a quiet location to avoid distraction. So we're going to go over these components again. So our antecedent, presenting the learning trial, the teacher gets the student's attention by touching or saying his or her name. B, what the student is to say or do should be presented clearly and concisely. And remember, when we use too many words, it can cause the student to miss the key words. So if a part of my DTT trial was telling a student to sit here, I don't want to say, hey, come over here, sit here right in this chair. We want to use as least words as possible to get our instruction across. Initially, we want to keep the words the same for each trial. So if I say, hey, pick up the pencil, I want to say that and keep it consistent. As the student demonstrates initial understanding of the instruction, then you can start to vary the wording to enhance generalization. And also at that point, you can see if they're understanding what you're saying. Our next component, behavior, the student's performance of the skill to be taught. It allows the students 3 to 5 seconds to respond to each trial. So when we're saying something, hey, pick up that pencil. If they're not immediately given that response, it doesn't mean they're not listening. Give them 3 to 5 seconds to respond. And the student has 3 options. They have a correct response, an incorrect response, and a no response. And when we're taking that data, obviously you want to have that on there, what kind of response they gave you. So for C of our ABC, teacher's response to the student's performance of each trial. If the student's performance is correct, immediately reinforce with enthusiastic praise in combination with other previously identified reinforcers as necessary. If a student's performance is incorrect, or if the student does not respond, give oral or a physical prompt. And we could see that when the teacher, when she was working with him inside his house, and he would not turn around, we could see those physical prompts of turning his body and keeping him engaged, and she still used those words, and she still maintained eye contact to get that correct response that she desired. So using reinforcers with DTT. Reinforcers, I am a big fan of reinforcers, and reinforcers are honestly used in our everyday life, even as an adult. Like we want to be reinforced for the things that we are doing, even if it's like, you're doing your job great. And it feels good when somebody comes to you and say like, you're doing a good job. I appreciate you and I see you. So reinforcers are something that will be used in our everyday life. But in the classroom, a teacher should use reinforcers to motivate a student to attend and respond to instruction when utilizing DTT. Reinforcers should be as natural as possible. And the priority of the reinforcers. There can be social praise, there can be physical reinforcers, and then you have edible reinforcers. However, when we're using edible reinforcers, we want to use things that are low preparation items that are easily stored and transported. And that means you can get them easily, you can give them out easily. There's not this big thing to stop and go out and get them. They should be low calorie and low sugar. Obviously, we don't want to give a donut every time a student does something great because they would blow up. Next, they should be given to a child in small amounts to avoid satiation, and should be items that are quickly consumed by the child. So we don't want them to take all day to consume whatever edible reinforcers we are giving them. But also just reiterating that social praise goes a long way. Okay. So I want to show y'all a video on reinforcers.
When choosing a behavior reduction procedure, reinforcement procedures have many benefits. Reinforcement doesn't have the aversive side effects of punishment and extinction procedures. Another limitation of punishment and extinction is that they don't teach an alternative behavior that can be used to replace the maladaptive behavior. Reinforcement procedures should be used first before punishment and extinction procedures are used.
Green. And it's Gringo. Oh, that's right. Good job.
So we can see DTT happening here. We see the teacher being engaging. She's presenting the learning trial to the student, and she's giving him that social praise as a reinforcer. And you can tell that the child really enjoys that. And we can also see a physical prompt as well.
Wow, Blue.
Give me the one you drive.
A motorcycle. Give me 10.
You drive a motorcycle. Let's drive. The reinforcement procedures we are referring to are called differential reinforcement procedures. Differential reinforcement is a procedure involving two separate behaviors. One behavior is being reinforced and strengthened. The second behavior is put on extinction. Here is an example of using differential reinforcement. If Jill's parents decide to use differential reinforcement to decrease food refusal and increase eating vegetables, they might ignore the crying and pushing the food away and provide praise and a small piece of Jill's favorite treat in response to Jill eating vegetables. If Jill starts eating more vegetables and stops crying and pushing food away, then it can be called differential reinforcement. Differential reinforcement is the most widely known and most effective technique to reduce problem behaviors.
Yeah.
There are several forms of differential reinforcement.
Done.
So we see why the reinforcement part of DTT is so important, because we are reinforcing what we want the student to do. And again, if we're using DTT to change a behavior, if we're reinforcing every time they have that behavior and we show them like, I am so glad, or you're doing great sitting down, imagine they're going to want that praise and that validation, and but eventually the behavior is going to change. If we're using DTT to increase speech and we're giving them that praise every time they're using their communication device, like in my classroom, like we have started implementing communication devices for the past 2 weeks. So we finally got them in, and we're using an app called Proloquo. So I'm able to use DTT when I'm revoking a response and I want that response, and the students are enjoying the social praise and also the edible reinforcers that they get when they are responding to questions on their iPad. So we're increasing that behavior, and we are getting the desired behavior that we want out of them, and they are going to want to do that and use their communication device because they know that there's going to be a reward or social praise after it. And not only that, they are realizing that they can communicate their wants and their needs. So just to quickly go back over discrete trial training. Discrete trial training is a method of teaching based on principles of applied behavior analysis. It involves carefully planned learning opportunities, which are the discrete trials. They are reinforced at a high rate to maximize the probability that a child will benefit from instruction. Again, we need to know that a brief learning opportunity that has a definite beginning and an end will happen with discrete trial, and it usually involves a student to teacher ratio of 1-to-1, with the child and teacher sitting face to face across a desk or a table. And if we keep these things in mind and we utilize DTT to the best of our ability, then we can definitely see change in our classroom within our students, and it can decrease these negative behaviors in our classroom.